The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hello, my friend. Stay a while and podcast. Wait weeks for that. Weeks.
No, old man. Just give me the information I need so I can go talk to the blacksmith, get some cool items, go kill some.
So actually, I will say this right now, and then we will circle back to this later. I realized, this game kind of kicks you off like Zelda. Like, you just drop into the world, and they're like, I don't know, talk to people or don't. Go explore. Right, like it's super. Have your way with the land of Diablo as you like.
Oh yes.
Hey George, what did we play?
We played Diablo 3 for. I played it on the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, you had a good opportunity in there. You could have said Hellfire because we also had the Hellfire expansion.
Yep. No, I actually what I should have said was Neverwinter Nights.
God,
we should play that at some point. Actually, I played the hell out of that game.
I don't. Probably got a few years. Not like a super long time, but probably a few years to wait. It was probably like 2004, maybe 5.
Yeah, I mean, you continue doing your part of this thing. I'm checking.
We played the original Diablo for PC. It came out January 3rd, 1997. And a quick summary, if you somehow have not heard of this game, because this game still has like a legacy, insane fan base to this day. So like new generations of people are picking this game up. Diablo is an action role-playing game that is, intentionally or not, one of the best computer adaptations of the original Dungeons and Dragons ever made. Because it's just a dungeon crawl. It's a game where you go in the dungeon, kill the monsters, get the loot.
Dungeons and Dragons, not AD&D.
Yeah, 1.0. Players choose from one of 3 classes and then click their way through a horde of monsters, gaining experience and loot until the final showdown with the titular man himself. So it's like basically the first 5 minutes of Diablo and the last 5 minutes of Diablo are exactly the same game. Now, whether or not you can enjoy the game over the length of time it takes to finish it, that's a different question. But there aren't really surprises in terms of mechanics and stuff that are not present in the first couple of minutes, which is sometimes nice.
Yeah, sometimes nice, sometimes. So just to put a pin in the last thing, it was released June 18th, the day before my birthday, 2002.
2002?
So it's available now.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah, like right now, like as of this year. Like my birthday this year was happy birthday to me. We can play Neverwinter Nights.
Yes, happy birthday to you and not to me. You liked Neverwinter more than I did.
I mean, I love the crap out of that game.
But it's not that game. Yeah.
But that's not the game we played.
We
played Diablo.
Yeah. So what is your nostalgic experience for Diablo?
So I don't think I played Diablo. I think I exclusively played Diablo 2.
Yeah. We had that conversation early on where we were both like, there's some mechanics I can't figure out. And the more you and I talked, the more I was like, I don't know if he played the first one.
I don't think I did because the way I played Diablo 2 was through the guy who got me started on Dungeons and Dragons. He was like my gateway into a lot of this stuff because he was also like a computer geek, right? And so he had Diablo 2 on his computer, and he's like, you like D&D, you might get into this. And then a full bag size of Reese's Pieces later, like I was in it, but yeah, I think that he just started me on Diablo 2. So I had it had again blew my mind because I played Diablo 2 and I played Diablo 3. So I was like, yeah, I played Diablo, and then as we were playing, I was like, it seems familiar, but it very much so is like, if you know what this is the equivalent of Borderlands for you, right? Where we were having this discussion recently where I said, yeah, once you've played Borderlands 2, there's really no reason to go back and play Borderlands 1. It's like Borderlands 2, but it has a bunch of like weird stuff that you would expect that isn't there. not to like spoil anything, but yeah. So that's kind of where this was with me. Is I kept being like, this feels like a skinned down version. Like, are we playing the right game? Oh, we're playing Diablo, not Diablo 2.
Yeah. Which for my part is exactly why I wanted to play Diablo and then Diablo 2, because in my memory, I was like, oh, Diablo 2 has way more stuff, but it didn't change the fundamental formula. Did that stuff improve or lessen the core experience, right? Because bolting pinwheels and magnets and crap onto the outside of the thing does not necessarily make the thing better, right? Like a bike with streamers is like fun and colorful, but a bike with wind turbines on the handlebars would not be fun and colorful. So I was like, because I knew I had played Diablo 1. So I was like, I really want to do these in order. Because most of the time I'm like, whatever. Like, I mean, literally our second episode is Sonic 2. Like we coming out of the gate, we were like, order be damned. But for this one, because I was like, we're going to play Diablo 2 eventually. So I would like to play Diablo 1 first. I played the ever-loving mess out of this, but not too distant from your experience, I apparently also played Diablo 2 quite a bit, because there were some things that were not even necessarily good or bad, but just my brain was like, oh, this is part of the uniform gelatinous mass that is Diablo as a franchise, where it's like, oh, no. Most of those things actually came in Diablo 2, right? And so, good, bad, or otherwise, I did have that same kind of like, oh, where's the button to do X? Or how do I get into the menu that lets me configure this? Where the hell is my skill tree? Right? Like all these things that are just not part of Diablo 1. And spoiler, I didn't love every addition to Diablo 2. So I'm not saying that these things not being there is universally bad, but there were a lot of those moments, even though I thought I was more sure of the game we were getting into. I also had a fond memory for this game. This was one of the few games that I ever felt like I leaned into the like PC experience of it, where I remembered using they're called character editors, but for some reason the name they chose for them is trainers, where you can you can extract your character file, screw with it, and then reinsert it into the game. So like change your stats, change your class, change how much gold you have, right? All the stuff you would expect. But for some reason, that entire class of mods is what you would call them now. We're all called trainers. So it was like a Diablo character trainer. And I couldn't remember that name. And then I was looking around on some forum and somebody used that word. And I was like, yes, that. Where can I download one of those that will run on modern Windows?
Nice. Yeah, no, actually, I didn't get into that type of thing until way later, until actually Borderlands 2, where doing that type of stuff was way more involved.
Yeah.
But, so because, I was dealing with a PlayStation 3 at the time, and yeah, getting the information off of the PlayStation was in and of itself a bit of a chore, and then getting into the software would change, but it was worth it to make the ridiculous character I wanted to make.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Borderlands is an action RPG. It's in the exact same genre as this, right? Like kill stuff, get loot, get stronger. And once you've done that enough times, maybe for some people that's after the first playthrough, maybe for other people it's after the 1,000th playthrough, but eventually you're like, what if some insane bullshit, right? And then like, thank God these programs exist to let you live out these insane fantasies.
And I've actually learned about myself personally over time is that is my final phase of the game.
Yeah.
It's like
master
play
it, break it.
Yeah. And you're like, I mastered it. Now, what if I, do this weird conflux of things? If I have this perfect magical item that perfectly matches this perfect stat build with this, that, like I because it becomes a puzzle game at that point, It's like, what if I max all these things? Neat. I'm done now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like that usually means you are wringing the final drops of entertainment out of it. And for some people, that may be a tidal wave, right? That they may get huge amounts of enjoyment out of that, but that's probably on the end of the experience, right? Whether it's 30 minutes or 30 years, like it would be weird to then go back in that like session to being like, now I'm going to play normally again. And it's like, but why? You need like some space at least.
So shill
we shall. If you like what we're doing, you can, of course, follow us on all the socials, links and crap in the show notes. We really love it when people reach out on Twitter and ask for games and stuff. I stream most of the games we play on Twitch, so if you want to see some of the behind the scenes ahead of recording, you can do that. If you want to go a little bit further, you can leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, I guess they call it now. Or you can just word of mouth recommendation to a friend. I think those are always the most valuable. It's like, hey, you would like this. Go listen to it. And then if you really want to go nuts, you can support us on Patreon and help us keep the lights on. And if you do that, you get the after show. Everybody gets the after show, which is just bonus content, sometimes about the game.
If you spend $1,000, we'll do a 100-meter foot race.
Oh, yes. Yeah. This is like the first one I think I'm like ready to agree to.
Yeah, 100% in on.
Yeah, no, totally.
We need to figure out where in the shilling we fit in my $1,000 tier now.
Yeah.
But this is a new thing.
I would say it has to be after we shout out our supporters that we're about to shout out, right?
Yeah,
because we don't currently have anyone at the $1,000 tier.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So we'll do that moving forward.
See, and you could get more behind the scenes bullcrap like that by becoming a patron, right? Because we talk about that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we workshop what things we're willing to do for $1,000.
Exactly right. That's all the after show has ever been. Prove me wrong. Give us $1. Go find out. Yep. So first, we need to thank our 8-Bit Classics, Jacob,
a mystic monk,
Yarno,
a frantic fighter,
Jason,
a stealthy rogue,
John,
a manic mage,
and Kevin,
a delightful Deckard Cain,
and our 16-bit hero, Michael,
a damned Diablo,
and our full 3D supporter, David.
A hidden dropped item that you heard drop, but you can't really find. And maybe it's under the corpse you've covered up with it, but you've been looking at it with a mouse for about half an hour and you just can't find it.
I think I know what one of your early notes in gameplay is going to be.
Oh, no, I gave it away.
First, we got to talk about how it looked and sounded.
It looked like I couldn't find anything that dropped.
So your gaming computer is a laptop, right?
Yeah.
And do you plug it into a television? Do you have a gaming monitor? Like what size screen were you looking at Diablo on?
My forearm plus knuckles.
You just told everyone so much about you as a technology person. It is roughly the size of my elbow to my knuckles.
To my knuckles. Yeah.
Lord. Okay.
Yes.
So you probably have either
I think everybody just pitied you for having to edit this, like,
right?
Like, oh, that's what he's bringing to the table. He wasn't lying about just being the talent.
Quick, guess which one of us does all of the production work? Okay, so I'm going to say, because they measure diagonally, so that's probably like a 15-inch laptop, right? But not a huge screen. I played this game on my giant work monitor, which is far more pixels than this game was ever meant to enjoy. And I still thought it actually looked pretty okay. I didn't use any weird modern hacks to upscale or upres or anything. Like, this is just the version anybody could go buy on good old games. And I was like, this actually looks pretty crisp. Not perfect. Like, you can tell this is an older game, but you would never look at it and be like, oh my God, it's a blurry mess.
Yeah, no, I think that overall, visually, you can determine where everything is kind of. I mean, because the only things that really look like things are, you have to look human. The other humans have to look human. The dungeon walls have to look like walls, But outside of that, the skeletons look like skeletons. But if they didn't look like skeletons, that'd be fine. They're monsters, They're fantasy monsters, So the demons look like demons. What do demons look like? I don't know. They look like that, They don't. So whenever you're dealing with things in that genre, it's very helpful because it doesn't have to look like an established thing. It can kind of look like anything.
Yeah, even for popular monsters, right? It's like, oh, this zombie doesn't look like the zombie in this other game. It's like, no, those are Diablo zombies.
Yeah, but they're what zombies look like here. So you get a lot more license before. So, I mean, honestly, I would probably say it would have to, if it would have to look more like something else before somebody would challenge it, right? Even if a zombie looked like absolute hell, you have to be like, it's really more of like a slime monster. Just call it a slime.
Yeah.
That's a slime. But as long as it was in the genre of shambling corpse, you'd be like, I don't know, zombie, skeleton, sure, undead, got it. And especially this would be a mechanics note, but if it's doesn't differentiate mechanically, then it super doesn't matter, right? Like I would get frustrated if something looked like undead, but oh no, this is not undead. This is actually a demon. It's like, then why does it look like a skeleton? I'd get irritated. But if there's no mechanical incentives, it's just, I don't know, it's just a mob. I will say just some visual notes that I had. So overall, the visuals, I do think that those, for the most part, held up as much as you would. They hold up the way you think they do, right? They're the way that you're probably thinking of them in your mind. One of the notes that I had though for just visuals for the sake of visuals, there is zero fanfare for leveling up, and in a game that's all about grinding, that's a bummer, man. You know,
that's fair. It pops up the little thing in the left that's like, "Hey, you leveled up.
Hey, you leveled up," and it's like, "Oh, cool." I mean, it's as exciting as getting mail, you know?
Yeah. Like it should be in, because they can't interrupt you while you're fighting for your life, right? And you could easily gain a level in the middle of overcoming a mob. But then, you know, like when you open the character screen, maybe some confetti, right? When you finish distributing your points, like make a cool noise or have a little line of dialogue that's like, you know, I feel stronger, right? So, I mean, something.
Yeah. Or even when you're fighting mobs, like it doesn't have to, you know, be like, I like all of that. That's great. But like even just, you know, a little light circle that circles around your feet, or maybe like a little glowy orb on the top, you know, that kind of says like, oh, hey, and it goes like, swoosh, and says, you leveled up. One of the reasons why I think that is actually, first of all, again, like when you're grinding for levels, when that's kind of your core gameplay, right? You want as many things that make the happy chemical in your brain when you do the thing, which is gaining levels. But on top of that, all of your hit points and mana come back, which is mechanically important, you know? So if you're in the middle of slugging it out with a bad guy, you're like, I don't know if I can make it. And you drop one of them and you level up in the process, your tactics will completely change. But you could very well miss that fact that you suddenly went from having like 1/4 of your health to full health, unless, you know, if you're focused on the tactics and not darting your eyes all over the screen to try to figure out what's going on. So I felt that was disappointing.
Yeah. And I would say a designer might have argued, well, your health and mana suddenly replenishing is the fanfare, right? Like, because they have these cool little, the status bar at the bottom of the screen, the omnipresent, you know, status bar is actually like super iconic, right? So like the health is like a demon with a big like glass orb on its back as red, and then the mana is like an angel, I guess, or like a paladin sort of thing with like big wings, and it's blue, right? And so,
which I spent way too much time trying to figure out the symbolism there. Way too much.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it does raise some questions. But I mean, as you get hurt, the thing becomes, you know, clear because the liquid is draining out of it. So when it suddenly refills, that is a momentous thing if it matters in that moment mechanically. But if not, there's no, it's the exact same animation as when you drink a potion, right? The liquid just fills back up, and it doesn't even like slosh in and out. Like it just, the level is instantly higher or instantly lower. So it's, yeah, this is such a weird thing, I think, to like gripe about, but you're totally right. Is eventually you would have to, you know what it is because I think the thing you're grinding for after the fairly early part of the game is not levels, it's stuff, right? And so when a weapon comes flying out of a treasure chest or comes flying off of a corpse and it smashes to the ground, and it like different categories, I guess, of things make different noises when they strike the floor, like that's still not very spectacular visually, but like that's the fanfare, right? It's like they dropped a thing, ooh, what is it? But yeah, gaining a level is like,
Yeah. And it's funny when you say getting the health and mana is the fanfare. One of the things that we'll talk about in mechanics is that in Diablo 2 and in most games, mana regenerates. It does not do that here.
It does not.
We'll discuss that more, but to point to your note on visuals is it ain't fanfare if it's getting expected, you know. So it's like,
yeah,
you got all your mana back. It's like, damn right I did. You know, it's like your boss handing you your paycheck and being like, aren't I a great boss? It's like, no, this is what's expected, you jerk.
This is the transaction.
Yeah, this is what we're doing. So it's funny that you mention the sound effects of things flying off and dropping, right? Many things have many different sound effects for drops, and those things are 100% necessary because you need to be listening for whether or not things drop, because they can drop, kind of anywhere. They can drop underneath a body, a dead body. So you got to be listening to that, because if you don't, you will absolutely 110% miss 50% of the drops, I'd say, at least 20, because there was, a considerable number of times when I heard a thing drop and I then went hunting for it on the screen, which, and I think that keeps it in the visual note, right?
It does.
So I'm looking for it. Right?
Yeah. No, because it's like certain kinds of things make like a metal clanking noise. Then there's like a
potion drop.
Well, there's potion drop, but there's also like a tempered metal noise. So like a helmet makes like a clunk, whereas like a sword or an axe makes like a tink.
Ting, ting.
Kind of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So like there's these, I don't know, there's probably half a dozen or so categories of, the potions. Rings make like a very like, a ring sound. They ring the metal. That's where we get that word. It's books and scrolls make kind of like a paper rustling noise. So like if you're a warrior and you're like, I have invested 0 in magic, like I can't use any scrolls, I can't use any spell books, I just don't care at all. Like you may actually learn to tune the paper rustling noise out and then not have your eyes suddenly frantically scanning. But oh man, if you heard a noise that you care about and then your eyes are frantically scanning, that can be a super frustrating experience. I'm realizing, talking about this, that I really enjoyed the non-music that this game has, where it's like, because I played a lot of this with headphones on because I streamed most of it, and there's like the different biomes, and each biome is visually super rich and different, and the mechanically they all function differently, and we'll talk about that, but like they all have like their biome soundtrack, and it's not music. Like there's usually a drum part that is pretty recognizable, and there's sometimes like a little choir part that's kind of a melody. Like you would never walk around like humming it, but it's like discernible if you're listening to it. But now that I'm thinking about it, all of that music probably exists exclusively to not interfere with the an enemy dropped something noise.
Yep, because that is critical. No, and so like we said, enemies drop things. It makes unique noises, which is very helpful. But literally at one point in the game, I'm sitting there, I'm playing it, and Megan just was walking through the room. A potion dropped underneath the remains of another bad guy, right? And this is earlier in the game where potions matter. I needed that potion, right? It's drugs. So only about 3 pixels of the potion were visible. So like I slowly, ran my thing because it was underneath the remains of a bad guy, right? And so I found it and I was like, okay. And so then I moved the mouse off because Megan was walking through and I said, Megan, come here for a moment. There is a potion on this screen right now. Find it. And she could, it was Where's Waldo, man. She couldn't, she couldn't do it. And I was like, no, don't feel bad. I couldn't do it either, which is, and we can, I'm just going to throw this in there. What I was used to is in Diablo 2, you hit tab and it highlights everything like Christmas, that. And so I kept thinking like that has to exist. Right. And I didn't look it up, but I just decided that it didn't exist. And I believe that I am correct. But yeah, so
Diablo 1 has the search spell, which highlights things. And if you're the monk, right, you have the search skill.
Right. That. So
poor choices.
Anyway, so yeah, all of that. The only other notes I have for visuals, for the sake of visuals, is the map is 100% necessary, man. Like that thing. And a lot of games play this way. I'm kind of on the fence about it in general. Sometimes it bugs me, sometimes it doesn't. But is that basically, I'd say half of the time, I was just navigating by map. Like I wasn't even looking at my person. I looked at my person when I was in combat. When I was exploring, I would I was basically navigating by map, which, arguably puts you more in a metagame context than a game context. But I don't think that narrative is really what they're driving here, as strongly. So I don't think it's as important that you be in the mix. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about it, but I did notice it.
Yeah, I generally don't mind if I'm navigating by map right up until I realize that I'm doing it. And then I'm kind of like, right? Because the series that actually made me realize this was modern Final Fantasy. Modern Final Fantasies are visually incredibly beautiful, rich environments that you are not.
Did you say they're hallway simulators?
Yeah, they are. Right. But the thing is, the world looks massive and expansive. And the way you know to not pointlessly bury your face into an invisible wall is because you can see on the map, this is the part you can actually walk on. Yes, the map is 25 times wider, but you just have this like little narrow strip. And so starting probably with like Final Fantasy 10, I bet, on the PS2, I just learned to navigate by map. And it took me a long time to realize that I was doing that. And then when it finally clicked, I was like, that's why these beautiful worlds like are meaningless to me, because I'm not looking at them. Right. And Diablo has this exact same thing. The critical difference that doesn't eliminate the problem, but I think lessens it slightly, is it's like a superimposed overlaid map. So since you are always in the center of the screen and the map is overlaid on top, because it's an isometric camera, right? So you have that Final Fantasy Tactics Fallout 1 sort of camera. It's Sonic 3D Blast, the progenitor of good isometric camera.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a great game. We did a podcast on it.
We did. Everybody should listen to us praise it for 3 hours. So
two-parter.
having the map be overlaid means like it's kind of sort of a morbid comparison, but it's like when you fire a pistol or a rifle, like you technically are looking at the sights, right? And then like not at the thing, you're looking at the sights on the gun, right? And this is kind of like that. Like when the map is overlaid, you're sort of looking at the map, but at least the world is like right on the other side of the map. Whereas in Final Fantasy, it's like, no, I'm looking at the bottom like 5% of the screen way off in the corner, and it's sad.
Well, and also too is that the map is a button hold away from not being there, right? So I mean, that's the things you turn the map on and you're like, okay, you walk around and you're still, to your point, looking at the main part of the screen, and you just turn the map off. The only other I've got two other minor notes. One of them is again with the visuals, and this is I can't let this go, which is some of the death animations I felt look like the enemies are dropping stuff, like so they'll fly apart.
Yeah, they burst into pieces.
Yeah, because they burst into pieces. So like, especially if I hit and two things die, and then I hear a thing drop, but they burst in pieces. I'm like, well, crap, and now it's like, I don't know. I guess I got to search inside of their weirdly deep orc box to find out where it is. So that bugged me. The only other minor note that I have, and I don't know what this note means. I just wrote it down, and now I want to share it with you because I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote it down. But I said, monkey walks like they're constipated. Don't know what to do with that.
I think what class were you playing as?
I was playing as the warrior for most of it.
Okay.
I did technically play as all of them for reasons that we'll get into, but
he kind of walks, tensely.
Oh, monk. That's what I meant. Monk walks like he's constipated. Yeah. That makes more sense. Yeah. He does. I know. I remember that now, and he does. So that's it.
We played the good old games version of Diablo comes with Hellfire, and just as a quick aside, inside baseball thing, Diablo is made by Blizzard. Hellfire is actually made by Sierra, so it is a third-party DLC that layers on top, which is why some of the things that feel different are weirdly different, because the base game, Diablo, actually got patched up to version 1.09. Hellfire is based on Diablo 1.04. So if you play Hellfire, there are bugs present that are not in base game Diablo because of reasons. So, one of the things that I say all that to say this. In Hellfire, when you are in town, you walk at double speed, just so being in town is less of a chore. but they didn't like, I don't know, make new animations for that. They just play the walking animation at double speed. So if you are playing Hellfire, when you're walking around in town, it looks like friggin' Benny Hill. Like it's so yeah, I mean, literally one of the first notes I had before I realized what was happening was, why does everyone walk like this?
Right. Yeah. And that's probably because that was also my first note as well. So that was probably me being like, I don't know why does this look so weird?
Yeah. Yeah. If you play base Diablo, people move in town at the same speed they move in the dungeon, but they look normal because it's the walking animation at the proper frames per second.
Gotcha. You have anything else for visual specifically?
I just had two things I want to make sure I called out for the audio. One is this game and any game like it, its version of the walking noise is the hitting noise, the getting hit noise, and worst of all, the missing noise. So, yeah, for whatever reason, they thought it would be fun and entertaining if when you start, like you don't have a very high to hit, so you miss a lot. And for some insane reason, I literally do not understand and don't have the ability to suss out without doing research, it's way worse in multiplayer. So I played like 90 minutes of multiplayer and I probably heard the "you missed" sound effect 1,000 times. I mean,
that's a bummer.
And everyone in chat was just like, oh yeah, this is one of the weird quirks about multiplayer. Ha ha ha. And I was like, this is not any fun. The point is to kill monsters and get loot. And I am literally unable to defend myself. What kind of hero am I? So those noises get super repetitive, but by the time you are further into the game, there's spells going off, enemies have ranged attacks, there's traps going off, right? So like there's enough other noise that you're not just hearing like tink 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 bones, right? Like the first couple floors are like that, but then eventually there's like more cacophonous nonsense going on. So it's not quite as bad as Donkey Kong Mario walking noise. The voice acting is like so B-movie. Like it's not good, but it's great. And I love it to pieces. And then I wanted to just give a nod to the visuals. Like when you put on certain kinds of equipment, like character looks different, right? Like heavy armor looks different than like medium armor, which looks different than light armor, right? When you have a helmet, like different helmets look different. If you have a sword, it looks different than when you have an axe. And I know that sounds a little silly, but like the loot, man, like when I put on my first set of magical plate mail, I want to see that. When I get a magical tower shield, I want to see that. When I get a new staff that has like some cool spell effect, I want to see that cool spell effect, right? Like otherwise you're just playing a tabletop game where it's all theater of the mind. Like I want to see like this cool armor looks like this cool ring looks like that, this cool spell has this huge area of effect. And they do that. Like they deliver on quite a bit of variety.
When and that's the thing is that, you know, back in this time frame, I mean, nowadays that's just, it's obvious, you know, obviously that happens, but you know, back in the day, you know, yeah, you got the +7 sword as opposed to the +1 sword, and it just looked, the icon looked different when you looked in your inventory, but I mean, your sword looked the same, you know. So it is good that this was around the time ish when you started seeing more and more of the, hey, if you equip a different weapon, it looks different. And now, you know, if could you imagine if in Dark Souls you equipped a different weapon and it didn't, you know, it just looked like your generic, you'd be like, what's happening? There are still some JRPGs, the Tales series still will do that just armor swapping, but now that's actually more of a choice in and of itself. But yeah, no, to your point, right, is that it was important that they make that choice, and they did.
Well, and this is something that I didn't understand as a kid. That is, we are doubly right to expect this from a PC game. Because like you got all this storage space, you got all this processing power. You're not trapped on some tiny disk or, God forbid, on a cartridge. Like, if you're going to make me buy a computer powerful enough to run your computer game, like you had better do something with all of those resources. And they do.
Yep. Gameplay mechanics?
Yeah. Where would you like to start with what I assume are some pretty strong feelings about a few choices they made? Because I was trying to disorganize or disentangle and organize my notes, and I couldn't do it. Like each thing I felt strongly about is so tightly coupled to other decisions they made that I had trouble getting these in order. So please, for the love of God, set an agenda.
I'm kind of in the same place where I'm like, I don't know where to start. I'll start with my strongest opinion, which is the one that screwed me the hardest. The saving systems, it just it just is, like it is. Is it so far afield from games of its time? No, it's pretty on point, but that's not what you expect these days, And so, especially in a game that is this much grinding and you are this likely to die and things can change so quickly, the fact that literally saving is 100% on you. There is zero autosaves. There are zero checkpoints. There is none of that. If you do not save, you are screwed, to the point where you can literally be an hour into gameplay, die, and it boots you back to the main screen so you can ostensibly load your game. But if that game doesn't exist, load is just blacked out and it goes like, yeah, man, start over. I'm like, seriously? I mean, I remember just like my blood running cold when I saw that and just being like, an hour, it's gone. So I mean, and that's why I say that I technically played as all of the classes, because what happened to me, and we'll get into the details of each of these things, was I was like, I'm going to play as the monk. I consider myself to be a monk. We've done a bunch of hand-to-hand training when given the opportunity. I want to play the monk, so I'm going to play as the monk. And so I did that, got an hour in, died, and everything was just gone. And I said,
it all went dark.
Well, yeah. And I said, well, that happened. So I was like, okay, well, you know what? Since I'm playing this to review the game, I will try a new class. So I logged in as the mage, and I was like going around doing my thing, and then it's about maybe 20 minutes in, half an hour in, when because I went and talked to people and did all sorts of stuff, and kind of got a feel for it. I was like, mana doesn't regenerate. What? With a spellcaster? Get that garbage out of my office. So then I went back in again and settled on the warrior. And then that's where I did the rest of my playthrough. So yeah, I mean, it just bends my mind that they would set up the saving system that way. I guess not so much because it was common at the time, but as far as what you anticipate nowadays, wild.
Oh, it's exceptionally wild by modern standards. But even at the time, there is something interesting going on here that I'm not 100% sure what they should have done other than throw up a screen that literally tells you what to expect. Because I don't know, maybe it's in the manual, maybe it was like on the friggin' box, I don't know. But like, here, see if you pick up what I'm laying down. So when you are playing single player, which is most of what I did and all of what you did, right? Mm-hmm. Saving is completely on you, the player. You can save at any time. Like, I think literally, other than if you're in a conversation or a store, you can hit escape and get the save menu, right? And on modern computers, the save happens so instantaneously. At first, I was like, did I do it?
Did it save? Yeah.
Right. But here's the thing that's super weird. So I didn't say this when I was describing the game, but this game is a roguelike, sort of, because every time you start a new game, the quests that you get are randomized, and the floors, the dungeon layout, and also the enemies. Like, there are some enemies you might go through a whole playthrough and never see those monsters on the floors that they inhabit. So there's a lot of randomness, but this is the part that, like, if I have encountered this in other games, I was certainly not aware of it. Like, I became aware of it on this playthrough. Is you're not actually saving the world, you're saving your character. Because at any point, you can say, start new game, but use that character, right? Use this warrior, and you just drop into another parallel dimension where no quests are completed, no floors are revealed. But if you've gone, like after you go down to the next level, there's like a new entrance that will take you directly to those floors. All of those are open. So the reason you might want to do this is because monsters don't respawn. So you go in, you kill everything, and you're like, I'm still struggling to beat the last boss. I don't feel strong enough. I will start a new game with my level 22 warrior and then go grind out some levels and then start a new game with my level 22 warrior or my level 26 warrior now and go grind out some levels. And so I had, because, Rick and Morty now exists, I had this like existential crisis where I was like, oh, the only Tristram that I saved was the last one. I abandoned all those other ones. Like
Can't go back.
They're out there with no hero, and I can never go back there. Right. So it's like forward only time travel. Like, and it's such a weird thing. And then, I say all of that to say this, and then I will let you get a word in edgewise. The reason the single player game functions that way, this game is meant to be played online. And when you play online in multiplayer, even if it's just, two computers in the same room, when you're playing a multiplayer game, every time you load, all of the floors regenerate. They're all randomized. All the monsters come back. And when you die, you just drop all your stuff. And you have to ask your friend to go in and get it. So you don't actually save in multiplayer the way you save in single player. So I think all of the seemingly insane decisions they made around saving in single player are because this is a multiplayer game that has a practice offline mode.
and that very well may be the case, but I will tell you that I'm in no way defending this. Autosaving existed by this time in history, so like this just still straight sucks. But like, I think that's how they arrived at this insanity. Right. Well, especially because, autosaving and allowing you to save whenever just adds some degree of redundancy, right? So it doesn't have to be an either or, it can be both. And on top of that, what ended up happening with where I kind of got to the point where I was like, fart noise, done, was I saved myself into a corner accidentally, like I just didn't have the potions, and I was like, I don't have any potions. Let me just save real fast. And then there was a bad guy off screen that I didn't see, and he just came barreling at me, and I could not outrun him, and I tried 3 or 4 times. I was like, I might be able to thinking my way out of this, or just get to the point where I just roll all 20s, they roll all 1s, and I statistically kick their butt. But I mean, I don't see it happening, so I'm good, So the fact that they, again, put all of that on the player to be like, man, figure it out, is really punishing, and so did not care for that.
Well, and that's the weird brutality of your character's relationship to the narrative. Is the way to deal with that would have been to start a new game using that character, because then you load in town. Right. And so, but all the quests are now uncompleted. You have new quests. All the floors, that you've already been on are now all refilled with monsters, which for me, when I was grinding in the back half of the game, was what I wanted. But like, if you don't know that is the way that entire mechanic works, which the game does nothing to explain to you. And I'm sorry, this game came out in 1997. Nothing about the phrase start a new game implies using your former character. Like, there's such a massive like leap of logic you have to make. And even after I understood it, I tested it a few times to see if it was really working the way I thought that it was working. Cause it's just like, I have no memory. I mean, it's probably because I mostly played this game online when I was a kid, but like, I was like, I have no memory of single player working this way. This is bananas.
Yeah. So that too, and maybe all of this makes sense through the lens of multiplayer. Just to touch on it again, mana doesn't regenerate. That is, again, kind of, I think, a gimme, especially if you're going to be. I mean, to me, the point of mana is it creates a difference in kind in play, right? In the sense that instead of just walking up to a bad guy and click, 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 dead. Click, 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 dead. It gives me something to break up that monotony, right? And so the idea is that the breaking up of that monotony should be able to be done at a certain frequency. And the way to modulate that frequency is how fast your mana regenerates. That to me is kind of the purpose of that. It's like, you can do a fun mini move or a super move, but you can only do it so often, right? So the fact that I went in with my wizard and or sorcerer,
warrior,
I went in with my
sorcerer.
Right. I went in monk, right?
Monk came in Hellfire, right?
Okay. I was like, I swear I played.
Nah, dude.
It was you the whole time. You're still in the game. That was just, again, I was like, oh, well, then what's the point of any of that? That I just wanted to cap cap that.
Well, and I will do you one better, because when you go talk to Pippin, the healer guy, he will restore your health for free. And so I think I literally said out loud on stream, "Oh, that means if I go and talk to the witch, she will restore your mana." Nope.
Nope.
There's just no.
Mana is more precious than health, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like mechanically they wanted warrior is the easiest class, rogue is like the middle difficulty, and then sorcerer is the hardest. But I feel like the way they chose to make sorcerer harder was not just by limiting how safe they are in the labyrinth, but by also making it just literally more of a pain in the ass to interact with the world.
Right. And so also too, I kind of understand why they would do this, but I didn't like it, which is there's no fast travel, right? There's no fast travel of any kind except for the ruins, scrolls, whatever, right? That teleport you back to town. But those are a limited resource, right? So what that means is that, and they're from what I could tell, very limited. Like in the time I was playing, I only got a handful of them.
You can, I think, starting fairly early, if not literally from the beginning of the game, you can buy them from the witch.
Oh, okay. Well, then I did not observe that.
And it's a learnable spell, but you got to find the book randomly.
Right. Anyway, so the reason why I mention it though is that actually, if that's true, if you can buy them from the witch, then that fixes this problem. The only difficulty then is that you have to know that you can buy them from the witch. But yeah, it's that, I'm fine with there being some type of cost of moving back and forth to the labyrinth, but the fact that I was, in my opinion, kind of grinding through and trying to find these took a lot of the fun out, because I was like, oh, well, do I travel back now with all of this stuff, or maybe I'll get new stuff or different stuff? And I didn't want to be doing that mental calculus. I just wanted stuff. Which dovetails into, since that note kind of loses some steam with knowing that you can get it from the witch. But the game is, and I used to love this when I was a kid, and I cannot tolerate it anymore. It's a grind, man. It's grinding. Mm-hmm. That's the game forwards and backwards. Like the first encounter is, like you said, just like the last encounter. It's just it's basically playing a slot machine.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is well, let me actually take a step back to you didn't know you could buy town portals from the witch, right? Because you were playing the warrior, so you probably weren't spending a lot of time perusing.
No, I talked to her once, and I was like, right, magic, got it, and didn't talk to her again.
And this is something that a modern, like a looter shooter, right, like a Borderlands, would, I think, not get wrong. Is Tristram is a very small town, right? There's a small number of people here. They're the only number of people that are ever here. You get all your quests from them, except for like the few that you stumble upon organically, right? Everything happens in this tiny little area, and it's not a huge amount of work to talk to everyone, but they also give you zero incentive to do that. And the thing is, some people would probably say, what are you, a moron? Like, yes, go talk to everyone, see what they do, see what menu options come up when you talk to them. But I don't know that I believe it's reasonable to expect the player to systematically grid out the town and talk to everyone. So what a modern looter shooter would do is be like, oh, here is a person you must talk to. It is impossible to advance the game without talking to person A. Person A makes you go talk to person B and C. Person B makes you talk to person F. Person C makes you talk to persons D and E, right? So like you, through some like BS fetch kill the rats in the basement of my tavern quest, like you meet each person and you learn what they do. Even if it's just like a quick 2-sentence summary, at least the game now knows that you, the player, know what you can buy from the witch, what you can buy from Pippin. The fact that the barmaid doesn't like do anything, I think, like she's just literally functionless as other than like set dressing. So like, but you can easily start the game and just walk straight into the labyrinth, walk right through the middle of town, never talk to a single person.
Well, and part of the issue is that some of the people you talk to are fairly pointless. Like, and that reinforces the fact that, maybe it's just the functionality doesn't exist. Cause like I spoke with Deckard, I spoke with the guy who's like, I spoke with the blacksmith, right? But then the next person that I spoke to, I believe, was the barmaid, and she said nothing of value. And then the next thing, I was coming out of the labyrinth, I got a little bit turned around, and I talked to a drunk, and he just chat all over Deckard Cain and was like, "Guy sucks."
Yeah.
I was like, "Cool,
yeah,
what? All right, fine, whatever." And so then I'm like, okay, I'm not going to talk to somebody unless I have a reason to talk to them, and I know I got to talk to the blacksmith, so I'm going to talk to that guy. So yeah, I agree 100% that that's absolutely what a modern looter shooter would do, is force you to talk to these people. On top of that, for a portion of the game so critical as like a town recall, is, I mean, you can find it's money, right? Like you can go buy scrolls that allow you to recall, right? Or just give me a recall stone that when I click on it, it costs me 100 gold, which is what it would cost in the store anyways, right? Because again, it's critical that you have that, So for something that's so critical, and if they're like, man, we don't want to create all of these mini quests for you to go run around and learn who the hell everyone is, it's like, then just give me a different way to get this done. Give me a button that I can push. It costs me 100 gold, and then, because in worst case scenario, I'm in the labyrinth, I'm out of gold, and it's like, well, I mean, I just gotta grind for some gold. So,
and this is, again, it doesn't defend this as a design choice, but you could imagine the designers saying, "Yeah, we're not gonna force you to do anything, because then every time you start a new character, you'll have to jump through all those hoops, and that'll be annoying when you're playing online with your friends and starting a new character," right? Because if you like, oh, with this group, I'm the warrior, and with that group, I'm the sorcerer, and with this group, I'm one of the rogues, right? So it's like, I have these different characters that I play online with different people. And if every time somebody was like, oh, hey, me and, my roommates are going to start up a Diablo game, like, we need a warrior, like, come play warrior. Like, oh, okay, I'll start up a new warrior. It would be really annoying if you had to jump through all those hoops every single time. So they I don't think they didn't understand that a new player might need this information. I think they hyper optimized for, you will get it from a human. Like, a human being will tell you, this is what Pippin does, this is what the witch does, this is what Cain does, this is what the blacksmith does, this is what everybody does, right? And like, where they are if you don't know, if you're playing for the first time. Because since you're constantly starting new games in single player, and you're constantly like bamfing in and out of realities in multiplayer, since it resets every time you load into the world, like, you can't have the oh, you're brand new here hoops every single time. And so there's this just tacit assumption that you either already have that information, or someone is going to give it to you, because the game isn't going to give it to you. And I feel like a modern game might do something like, hey, this person has no save files on their computer, we're going to treat them as a newbie, right? They instead of assuming that you've played the game before, or that you're going to play with people, like, we have a strong enough signal. This is your first launch of the game. We have a strong enough signal that you don't know. So you're actually going to get funneled through the friggin' Skyrim waking up in the back of the cart experience, right? But,
ooh, yep.
But if you have 10 characters and hundreds of hours logged, then yeah, when I start a new game, just pretend I've been to this town 1,000 times, because you can see that I have, right? And like, I don't know, maybe nobody thought of that. Maybe it's not as good of an idea as I think it is, but like, being dropped in Zelda style, having no idea what to do, and there are certain mechanics that not understanding them makes the game functionally unplayable, like, that's problematic.
It is. It's a huge issue. And actually, to your point, right, is that Borderlands does exactly what you're describing, right? And Borderlands 2 does. And I played Borderlands 2 probably hundreds of hours, right? And I played many of them online with friends. And not only did you have to do the learning where everyone is quest for your first time, you had to do it at like levels at the new game plus and the new game plus. All of those quests exist, and you had to do them, right? But here's the thing: is that if you got to be introduced to 4 different people, what they did was all 4 of those quests are their own little individual quests, right? You got to do them, but they're their own thing, right? One doesn't key off the other. And so, what we did? We all split up and did one, and it took like 2 minutes. It was absolute chaos on the screen, because all of these, so when person A goes into a room and the new person gets introduced, they get their little like cutscene clip that takes, 10 seconds. And so it's like, this person's cutscene, that person's cutscene, this person's talking over that person. It was just abject chaos. But we knew what was going on. So all of a sudden we were like, okay, everybody split up. You're taking quest A, you're taking quest B, you're taking quest C. Okay, bing, bang, boom, done. It took 5 minutes. And I think that, was it mildly annoying that we had to do that? Sure. Was it good that we did it? Because I don't think we would have ever gotten to that point, because because we would not have understood how to play the game. Yeah, I mean, it's worth it. Like, life is cost.
Yeah, this is. I'm fascinated by this because I am quite confident in hindsight that most of the playing I did of this was online probably with strangers, right? Where I was playing essentially a single player MMO because I wanted to trade with people occasionally, or maybe play with like one of my few friends that I played online games with. But like mostly I was playing online because that was cool and what it seemed like you were supposed to do. You were supposed to log into battle.net and log into your BattleNet account, right? Like that's just how you played Diablo and Warcraft, and then later World of Warcraft, right? Like for BattleNet, like it's the thing. And coming back and playing it single player, because thankfully it was only about 15 minutes, not an hour, but I had the exact same experience you did, where my modern adult brain was just like, oh, I will just wake up in town, like in Grand Theft Auto, and they took some money out of my account to pay hospital bills, but no, right? No, I did have the good fortune of that encompassing a much smaller amount of time. But it was the same kind of just like experience halting, right? Just this like, what? And then your brain starts like jumping backwards, like, so are there save spots? Do I have to talk to someone? Oh no, it's just here in the menu. Oh, huh. And then for the rest of the playthrough, you're going through that like, oh God, I hope I don't save myself into a corner, right? Because I did one full playthrough and then like a second almost full playthrough, and I experimented with like the other character classes. I got like 90% of the way through my first playthrough before I understood that like start a new game mechanic, like how your character is the thing you're saving, not really the world. And so at any point during that time, I was, one escape return away from accidentally saving myself into a corner there, but for the grace of God, go I, like, right. So it's like, it's a little, because you would have come to school the next day, complained about that on the playground. I would have set you straight, and then it would have rolled off your back. But like, as an adult who's like, oh, this is a game I missed as a kid, or this is a game that looks interesting, or someone who just has a lower games literacy, like that would potentially just be a complete experience ruiner permanently. Like you might never return to this game.
Well, especially because, I mean, it's a hard exit point, right? Where you're just going, oh, I just lost 5 hours of my life. Well, I guess I'm done with that, especially with the amount of other things there are going on. Speaking of the menu, opening the menu doesn't pause the game.
It does not. No, the world is always happening.
Yep. And
which again, is to prepare you for online play, right? Because you can't have the menu pause the world when there's other humans.
Right. And that makes sense for online play. But, it is very like jarring when, you're sitting there like, okay, I just need a second to get my inventory together or do anything, and it's like, no, you're in it. Deal with that. So that's a thing.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't Borderlands also function that way?
It does, but the price of death is way lower,
True story.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, yeah. And because one of the funny side things with Borderlands is it won't let you change areas if someone's in the menu. And so that's a running thing where it's like, I'd be like, okay, we got to change areas. Frank, get out of your menu, Frank. Get out of your menu, Frank. I just got to do one thing. I'm like, do it when we get to the new area. Get out of your menu. Okay, it's fine. Okay. Think fast travel in 5, 4. Frank is in a menu. I swear to God. So anyways, yeah. But yeah, if you get tagged to death, then you just respawn at the nearest respawn point with a nice, So yeah. So I mean, the fact that and again, what happened to me was I opened up the menu thinking that the game was paused. It wasn't. I lost like half of my health. And I'm like, this matters. I now have to burn a potion, of which I have 3 and now have 2. And I might be screwed now. And the thing is that this game definitely falls into, because the way the save mechanic works is you could be like, am I screwed? Have I now saved myself into a corner? Should I actually just reload my last save and lose the last 3 minutes because I don't know if I don't have enough potions? And that machinations, that mental stress is something I don't really care for. So next, so eventually we need to talk about the game being grindy, but there is one note I want to make sure that I get, because we talked about this forever ago. So in the 7 core game aesthetics, right? There's, narrative, challenge, all that kind of stuff. But what fantasy and expression are 2 different ones, right? And I remember this was years ago. You mentioned, you said, like, how can you have fantasy without expression? Because 9 times out of 10, those 2 things do go together, right? Like in D&D, it's a fantasy game. Like, I am fantasizing about being this new person, but it is also an expression of me, because I put myself into it, right? I think that there is near zero choice in this game, in the sense of, like, once you're the warrior, you're the warrior, right? You can pick where you put your skill points, but that's it. There's no customization to it. This, I think, is fantasy without expression. The fantasy is you're the warrior, but there's no expression of you in the warrior,
Yeah,
you can
there's
change its build a little, but
that's what I was going to say is it's incredibly surface level, right? You could choose to be a warrior who only uses axes, right? You can choose to be a warrior who only uses 2-handed swords, and that's like part of your thing. And I do think the artwork and the kind of way those dice end up getting rolled does invite some projection. Like, haha, I'm not the warrior, I'm Conan the Barbarian, right? I'm wearing no armor and I only use 2-handed swords, right? But like, because some of the more narrative rich those expressive decisions are, you would be tanking your mechanical optimizations, right? So like, you could choose to be like the rogue is optimized for the bow, but because of the way the stats work, you can also make a very successful like sword and shield rogue if you use small swords, because they draw from your dex instead of from your strength, and it's like this nifty little thing you can do. But like, that's a pretty shallow puddle.
Well, and also too, I would make the argument that, I mean, with most games, you can project an aesthetic onto the game that the game does not enforce.
Half of this,
so
podcast.
I mean, like, exactly, right? So I mean, that's the thing, is that when all of a sudden you're playing a game and you say, I've decided that my version of Mario was actually raised by green Koopas, therefore he does not stomp on green Koopas, but the green Koopas blood enemy are the red Koopas, so I will destroy every red Koopa. I won't just bounce on them, I'll spin pound them into the ground and turn them into coins. So, I mean, you can do that, right? Like, you can project a narrative onto there, but the game doesn't do that, right? So, and I would actually say that the game disincentivizes that, because you could say, I'm playing Conan the Barbarian. I mean, and you probably will, till the game drops a really sweet axe. And then you're probably not Conan the Barbarian anymore, are you? Maybe now you're the axe warrior,
Yeah, it's like a kid Ned Flanders, like, I'm Dick Tracy. Get back here, Prune Face. Now I'm Prune Face. Get out of here, Dick Tracy. Now I'm Prune Tracy.
Prune Tracy.
Yeah. So, if you're cool flitting between fantasies super fast, then maybe it's okay.
I mean, I'm just imagining, like, because they have like that kind of short sword. So you're like, yeah, I'm Conan the Barbarian. Like, I'm chaotic good, fighting against the law, but for the righteousness of mankind. Check out this cool machete. I'm Jason Voorhees.
I mean, this is compared to modern looter shooters. I think the fact that the genre is now kind of colloquially called looter shooters tells you a lot about what has changed, right? Because they are like, this type of game, the kill things, get stuff, has very much moved in the direction of real-time gun stuff, right? So first person, and lots of range because you're using explosives and firearms. Fun fact, and I swear to God I already knew this, but somebody mentioned it in chat unrequested, so this doesn't count as research.
Yeah.
This game was originally going to be turn-based.
No, sorry, shouldn't have sworn on that one. That wasn't worth it. But anyways,
but it happened.
No, really.
So that's
in case you want to use the other take.
Use take 6. The isometric camera, the kind of like plotting way you move on a grid, like those are all artifacts of the fact that the game was originally going to be turn-based.
It's very, very Fallout 2.
Exactly, right? Like you could almost imagine someone was like, "Oh, I'm going to make Diablo." And it's like, "Oh, how are you doing that?" It started as a mod for Fallout, right? Like, because it's so close, like in terms of the aesthetics and the way you interact with the world and stuff. I think what they got in return for stress of like the real-time system is like, oh, this is like action packed and I'm in it and I have to manage my potions and I have to manage my mana. And when I open my inventory, the game doesn't pause. Like that's what they bought. The price they paid was grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Just
click, and yeah, it's clicking the game, right? You know, and that's the thing is you click on all the things, and yeah, there's some decisions to be made, but they're fewer and further between than I would like. I don't think that the cognitive load was really like high enough, you know, because in a looter shooter, right, you're quickly making split seconds decisions of, do I jump behind this cover? Do I jump out and shoot this guy? Do I do this? Do I do that? This is just, and then once all that happens, the bad guys die, the stress goes away, and then you get to kind of like plod through and compare all of the items, and that's the release on the tension and release cycle, right? And this one is just click, 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 drop. What was this? Oh, it was this thing. Okay. Which, I mean, to me, again, it has a very similar feel to a slot machine, right? You know, as you just pull the lever, see what comes out, you know? The only difference is that sometimes you pull the lever and you pass out. But yeah, so, and that's the thing is that honestly, I don't know when this lever flipped in my mind, but I have zero tolerance for grinding these days, you know? Like, the minute that I realized that the only thing about the game is extrinsically rewarding, not intrinsically rewarding. Like, I don't enjoy clicking the thing. I enjoy the thing clicking the thing gets me. It's you know what it feels like? It feels like in a first person shooter where you take a lot of damage and you get the tunnel vision and like the noise drops out. You know, that's what happens when I start playing a game is I'm on death's door where I'm like, I can't find a piece of me that gives a crap.
Close. So let me ask you this then, because what I don't seek out, you know, left click the game, but there can be like, I do understand the Skinner box enjoyment of slot machines, right? Like it is not my favorite taste, but it is a taste that when I have it, I'm like, oh, I see why people would seek this out. What I think is weird about Diablo 1, not just compared to the later Diablos, but the way that the direction this entire genre ended up kind of going in, is there are a lot of mechanics in this game that would potentially allow you to try interesting tactics or rethink your entire strategy, the whole way you approach the world. And you could play the whole game and never encounter some of those things because there's no crafting, right? You can buy stuff from Griswold, you can buy stuff from Pegleg Pete or whatever the hell the kid's name is. You of course find things in the dungeon. There's some unique items that you always get from like a specific quest, always drops this like specific unique item. But like a great example is we started at the beginning of the podcast talking about like, oh, an enemy dropped a thing and I can't see it. Well, one of the things that a piece of equipment can have is light radius. So like, it's not hard to imagine someone saying, oh, I know, you know, you only have 20 stuff points to distribute to a thing when you're crafting it. And I always over distribute to increasing my light radius because it's just so annoying when I can't find stuff. And I would rather have a weaker piece of equipment and a higher light radius because that's just how I choose to play the game. But if you just never get something that has light radius as one of its features, I guess, then you don't even get to consider making that choice, right? Ditto for like, oh, this thing, this staff has like a lot of charges of a spell that's really useful or interesting. or I like on my first playthrough, I found a Book of Town portal on like the second floor. So that entire playthrough, I never had to buy a Scroll of Town portal. And when I found them, I just left them on the ground because I was like, I can just cast the spell at will. And because I'm a monk, I don't care about preserving my mana. My mana is just to get me back to town, right? So like that didn't have to happen. And on the other playthroughs I did, I didn't find a Book of Town portal super early in the game. On one of them, I didn't find one at all. Like I was buying scrolls for the entire friggin' playthrough. Like there's just so, even as shallow as this game is relative to later entries in the series, you just are like cut off from so many of the mechanics where you just don't get to make choices around them. And that's frustrating.
Well, agreed. And actually that leads into what I thought was going to be a throwaway note, but I'm glad you bring it up, is the game has a lot of consequences, but not very much choice, right? So the thing is that, you get points, right? In to distribute to your character, right? And so you what do? You put them into a thing, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I think I now understand how this works, right? But there's no great way to undo it. I don't believe that there's a way to respec your character, right? So then,
I mean, not without one of those trainers.
Yeah. So it's not really choice then at that point. It's a consequence, right? Later it becomes a choice, right? The type of gear that you end up using is, I mean, really outside of the gear that you can buy, and even that's limited, right? It's a choice between several different things. And I think that, so to your light radius thing, that's absolutely something that people I feel would optimize the fun out of the game, right? If the game would be more fun with light radius, but you can do 2 more points of damage, no one's going to put in light radius. Everyone's going to do 2 more damage. To me, one of the exemplars of consequences over choice is barrel traps. I don't like, like when the barrels explode.
There's never a legendary unique item in a barrel.
No, there isn't, but there's always stuff, and stuff can be sold.
Right.
So that's the thing, is that to me is I'm like, okay, so, and but the problem is that when the barrels explode, there's no counterplay. There's nothing that I can do. There's no spell that I knew of. No spell that I could put on that would make me immune to barrel explosions, right? There was no, I mean, like outside of like just general armor, right? There's no way to prevent the damage. It's pulling the wheel on a slot machine, right? And so it's like, sometimes I get the, 3 Dr. Robotniks and I get the spines and I go, right? So sometimes I get a bunch of rings, but by my mental calculations, it was rings more often than spikes, right? It was loot more often than explosions. So I just kept hitting them, but it wasn't like when the barrel exploded that, oh, well, when it explodes, if you left click or right click fast enough, then you can have the damage or roll out of the way, right? Or something you could do. So I'm like, this isn't really a choice. It's optimal for me to break open all of these barrels, and sometimes I take damage from it. Sometimes I take a lot of damage from it, but I still think that it's the way to go,
Yeah, your comment is actually making me think this is where someone who is a diehard devotee of this game would say that's what the difficulty settings are for. Because on normal, I assume you played mostly on normal?
I believe so.
Yeah, because it's normal.
It's normal and then harder and
normal hell nightmare, I think, or normal nightmare hell.
Yeah, I played on normal. I was thinking about another game that I'm playing that I was playing on normal, but I started playing off on easy. Yeah. But no, this one I was playing on the easiest difficulty, which was normal.
Yes. And again, this is a thing where your character is not tied to the world; they're tied to themselves. So you can actually move a character between difficulties. So you can be playing on normal and then go grind in nightmare and then go back to normal and then go kill Diablo. I know, because I did that. And like, it's just, I was like, I just want experience faster. Right. And so that was just a way to make that happen, because the monsters on the first few floors don't gain any new abilities on the harder difficulties. They just have more hit points and drop more experience, which means I don't have to worry about them casting like insane spells or having these crazy ranged attacks or whatever, because they don't. So when you are the warrior, the trade-off is, do I soak damage to get the treasure, right? With the rogue, you can actually disarm traps, but then you have to like proceed much more cautiously, because if you forget to disarm the trap, then you get hurt and you don't have the giant pool of HP that the warrior has. As the sorcerer, I think there's probably a spell that tells you if something is trapped, but I spent the least amount of time with the sorcerer because I was just like, all right, I get it. But I think there is a spell that lets you know if stuff is trapped, but then you have to decide, am I going to spend mana to find out if I should, break open this barrel? And the truth is almost always the same. If the only cost is HP and I have some way to replenish that, whether it's going back to town, casting a healing spell, spending a potion or whatever, then I will just smash them open and soak the damage, right? So like it's there's an opportunity for it to be like intrinsically interesting and for there to be character expression, like how do you approach this problem? But why would you ever do that? Like just smash it open, take the damage or get the loot and then heal if you need to. Like that is the calculus all class types make at all times.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is that, in the game that I threw out at you, the Curse of the Old Gods, there are sometimes when, like there are explosions that happen, but one, they with any explosion, and sometimes treasure chests are trapped, sometimes they're not, all that kind of stuff. But there's always counterplay, right? So when you see an explosion about to happen, you can roll to get out of the way, right? Or when you see an explosion happen, you can press a button to counter, And I don't think that necessarily this game needs that robust of gameplay, but something that says like, oh, a bad thing happened, and as opposed to just planting your feet, gritting your teeth, and eating that horse, right? Like there's a thing you can do to dodge out of the way or take less damage, or but it requires you, the player, not your avatar, but you, the player, to be deft at the game, right? I feel that would just way raise engagement, but realistically, as Eagle Raptor says, like the player doesn't get better, the avatar gets stronger, and there's very little about this game that necessitates mastery other than for you to just understand the mechanics. But as far as the player actually getting better at playing the game itself, it's all avatar strength.
Yeah, no, it is even for the sorcerer who by the end of the game should have the widest variety of tools available to them and should be approaching situations where it's like, oh, do I want to use this spell to do crowd control? Do I want to use that spell to, snipe them from a distance or start kiting them out so that I can kind of like pick them off one at a time with like a powerful spell that only hits one monster? Like you do as the sorcerer, and to a lesser extent the rogue, because they can do melee and ranged weapons pretty evenly. You do sort of get into an opportunity where you can do that. You never really have to, except on like high level, high difficulty play, right? Where it's like Diablo is surrounded by demons that all have ranged attacks and crazy high melee attacks. So I need to be very strategic in how I do this crowd control, right? And then presumably you're playing on multiplayer where it's like, I go over here, you go over there, he comes over the top, and we support him. Like that's how we're going to
Nice.
You're welcome. That's how we're going to, figure this situation out as a party, but the mechanics must always function for an individual of any class type and for a party of any configuration. So like that's an incredibly hard thing to balance. Don't get me wrong, like I'm not selling this short. It's like, well, they're dumb. Like what I just described, it's like you could spend your whole game development career and never get great at that because it's incredibly hard. But it does mean that you as the player have to find clicking, enemy dies, seeing what the new loot is. Like that must be enjoyable. Otherwise, there is not enough other stuff going on, not enough narrative, which I actually kind of like that they drip out the narrative personally and they're not like shoving it down your throat. Because Diablo 2 and Diablo 3, I understand, kind of like shoves it down your throat. But you're not here for the story, right? Like there's lore, but there isn't a story. The story is actually quite shallow. The combat mechanics and the way you interact with the world isn't a ton, and that's all there is. So like if you get enjoyment out of like, ooh, what they drop, then this game will be fun forever because they drop random crap ad infinitum, right? But if you don't enjoy that, or if your enjoyment of that like peters off quickly, I'm not sure even the other things combined, like for a player like you, will like necessarily rise to the challenge of like making the experience continue to be interesting. This is why I'm super excited that we played this one before Diablo 2, because Diablo 2 adds so many things. There's so many more mechanics in Diablo 2, and I will be interested to see how you feel about that when we eventually get there.
And then eventually we can play Diablo 3 for nostalgia to like bookend the whole thing.
Sure. I never played Diablo 3 because oh crap, what was it? I won't waste time trying to remember this right now, but there was some mechanic that somebody was like, oh yeah, Diablo 3 relies a lot on, and I was just like, oh, that's actually like the thing I don't want. So like, if that is now core to the Diablo experience, maybe this is not for me.
I actually did play a fair amount of Diablo 3. I think I played through it at least
Are they up
twice.
to 4?
No, I think 4 is in production. Diablo 3
there's Diablo Immortal.
Maybe
Is the current one. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then there's a side one, and they're working on 4.
4, yeah, because for Diablo 3, I remember I eventually played it on the PS4. Mm-hmm. Because Diablo 3 was the game that made me swear off PC gaming. That was the one that broke
I remember that. That was fun. That was a fun night.
Yeah.
You making like 6 trips to Best Buy, cursing all the way.
Just and Facebook remembered it because I forgot I posted like a really garbage Facebook post about it, and then like Facebook was like, "Hey, remember this that happened 10 years ago?" And I was like, "I do." Thank you. But anyway, so it actually feels like a good lead-in. What do you think, man? Did it hold up?
I do have to share this one last fun fact, just because it came up in my life in a super weird way, which was this game was ported to the PS1, but the save for Diablo 1 on the PS1 took up an entire memory card. So much so
nice.
that when you pre-ordered the game, they actually shipped it with a dedicated, like specially branded memory card that was like, oh, this is just for Diablo. The reason I thought this was like insane that I had retained that fact all these years is somebody posted a picture on Twitter of 500 PS1 memory cards, like in a block the size of like a cinder block, right? Just all stacked up out of their packages, just like freestanding. And some, like kid was like, whoa, how many gigs is this? And somebody else replied, my brother in Christ, this is 64 of God's own megabytes. And so I saw that picture and I joked, just enough for one save file of the PS1 port of Diablo. Nice. And then as I was reading through, one other person made a Diablo 1 on the PS1 reference. And I was just like,
nice.
I feel so seen. Like there's one other dork out there who still thinks about this.
Like, oh, gigabytes. No.
That you're off by 3 orders of magnitude, my dude.
But yeah, man, what do you think?
So I came into this actually fully prepared to say no nostalgia goggles required because it is so.
I knew this would be a hard one for you. Like,
yeah, dude. It's so pure in what it is trying to be. Like, it's not. It is impossible to deny that there are things about this game that are dumb and have not aged well. It is also impossible to deny that basically this entire genre is like a reskin of this game. Like they made fundamental decisions at this time in history for this game. And I honestly don't know if this was the first game like this. I'm sure it's not, but it was certainly the most popular, right? Like every action RPG looter, click get stuff game is like just a Diablo-like, right? They're all kind of, derivatives of this because it was so incredibly popular. And there is some like mindless enjoyment around the simplicity of it. You're not juggling a complicated skill tree. You're not worried if you put your, oh no, I put the warrior's level up points into strength. Was that the right choice? Yes, of course it was. You asked, like, there's very little concerned second guessing, right? Up to and including abandoning the dimension you're in to go power level in a new dimension, right? So like the stakes just feel kind of low. And in a game that is like so dark and bloody and very 90s and it's Doom-esque, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if this thing exploded into a volcano of blood? It's like, yeah, but whatever, like, whatever, right? Like, it's just, it's cookie clicker, right? You remember that on Facebook? Like, it's cookie clicker, cow clicker. Like, you literally click the cow and it keeps track of how many times you clicked it. And that's it. There's no trick. There's no secret lore. The game is just who clicks the cow more. And in a lot of ways, that is kind of what Diablo 1 is. But if you enjoy the little thrill of like, oh, I got a thing, I can't wait to see what its abilities are. Yeah, it actually holds up exactly the way you remember it. If that is the drug you're chasing, right? If this is a small batch alcohol that was brewed only in your hometown and you just grew up with that taste and you still like it, even as an adult, like, yeah, it's exactly what you remember. My one caveat, which I think is slowly just going to become par for the course for PC games, is get one of those sweet fan mods that adds in a bunch of quality of life improvements, things like you have a permanent stash where you can save equipment for your other characters. Things like talking to the witch replenishes your mana. Things like widescreen support, right? Just like, you don't need to play the original. It's okay to like have those little quality of life things. So as much as it pains me to say it, I'm going to give it a nostalgia monocle. But man, if, like I said, if you grew up with this weird local flavor, like, it's exactly the way you remember it.
So for me, I was coming into this full ready to give it full nostalgia goggles, right? You know?
Did I bring you up?
So I'm gonna give it a nostalgia monocle as well, but with an asterisk, right?
That's fair. You came in pretty hard.
Yeah. Because I want what everyone will have to do is sometime later this year we will play Diablo 2, right? You got to go listen to that episode, and I will then my asterisk is this will either go up or down depending upon how Diablo 2 goes and how it plays into this, right? Because there are enough, because what I'm struggling with is I'd like to say, like, what I want to say is full nostalgia goggles, don't play this game, play Diablo 2. That's what I want to say, right? But I'm viewing it through nostalgia goggles, right? Because we haven't played it yet, you know? So I'm trying to remember what I thought Diablo 2 was. And to me, Diablo 2 is this game, but with all of the quality of life improvements, right? You know? So don't go out and play a mod, go out and play Diablo 2, right? But that being said, is that you are correct. It does have a skill tree. But the thing is that I would enjoy the skill tree because to me, I think that one of the things that I remember enjoying about Diablo 3 and I remember enjoying about Diablo 2 is the added expression that is given through a skill tree, right? So now to your point, right, it's like I'm not, Conan the Barbarian and like adding this additional narrative. Like I am a specific type of necromancer. This is the thing I do well. And part of the puzzle that I like about these types of games is what I want to go through the dungeon. I want to riggedy wreck everything, not because I'm playing on easy mode, but because I figured out the way, because I'm so smart to build a character that like really tweaked the damage or is perfectly aligned to my playstyle. So it may not be the best way to make the character. It may not be the solution to the solved problem, but the way I like to play the game, this is near game breaking because I'm good enough at playing it and I'm good enough at optimizing for my playstyle to do so. This game strips all of that out, right? But that being said, is that, until we actually go and play Diablo 2, I don't know if I'm like, well, maybe it's my own taste in these games that's gone down over time. It's not that Diablo 2 is the superior version of Diablo 1. It's just that, I'm viewing them all through nostalgia goggles. So the moral of the story is this nostalgia monocle with an asterisk, but go listen to our Diablo 2 episode.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day. than on all the experience gained.